So are you thinking of moving to Houston, but not quite sure if you want to buy a resale or a new construction home? Well, today we are here to share the pros and cons of buying a resale versus a new construction home. Hey family, so welcome back to the channel. And today, Damien and I are going to be talking about some of the pros and cons of buying resale versus new construction if you're considering buying or relocating to Houston, Texas. So Damien,
Yes,
I know you have like 6 years experience in real estate. And what would you say are some of the myths that you hear people say when it comes down to buying new construction?
It's going to take too long. It's going to take too long. Cost-wise, it's more expensive.
That's true. Hear that one a lot.
Yeah, but more than anything, what I hear, it's going to take too long. People don't think in regards to the time frame they'll have enough time. You understand what I'm saying? To get a new construction home.
That's true. And then I think another myth too is I don't want to say that you basically already said that it costs too much. You did say it costs too much, right? Yeah. Well, I think that's like the major myth, that it costs too much.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the market is like in other areas, but here in Houston, you can still purchase a brand new home for under $300,000. And it's a really nice home. I mean, you can get a home with all the upgrades, modern finishes,
appliances.
Yes, all appliances included.
Decent size lot.
Even pay your closing costs. Sometimes they may even contribute towards the down payment, depending on what type of loan that you're getting. So that's not always the case where it will cost more. However, I think you mentioned this when we spoke earlier, that you may lose square footage.
Yeah, I think that's another common, I don't know necessarily you call it a myth or not, but
well, it depends on where you're buying.
Exactly, and it depends on your price point. But a lot of people who are, might be comparing old to new home per se, they look at it from the standpoint, they think that these new homes, not as much, attention to detail in regards to the quality of the home and the size of the home. They make older home builders
solid. Yeah, they think older homes are a lot better. It's more sturdy.
I've heard that. Yeah. They got better bones. You know what I mean? Like, that's not necessarily always the case.
No, it isn't. So I would say with a lot of older homes, if you are doing resale, one thing to consider is you're inheriting someone else's issues. So you have to set money aside to take care of unplanned maintenance, unexpected issues. That home might not necessarily come updated and with modern finishes. And guess what? You as the buyer are going to be responsible for making those updates. Oftentimes, people will buy what I call like fixer-uppers, right? And I'm from the East Coast. I'm not from Texas, so it's a lot different on the East Coast. And on the East Coast, you could spend $700,000 easy on a fixer-upper, and everything in the home is builder grade. I know you've been in Texas, a lot of your life. So what would you say if you buy a $600,000 home?
If I'm buying a $600,000 home, I think that it needs to be on a 60-foot lot at least.
Exactly.
And a bunch of amenities. I think that's the big misconception in regards to buying a home, in regards to it being new or resale. You thinking that you got to sacrifice square footage, and that's not always the case.
No, it's not always the case. That's so true. And then I think also with buying a new home, oftentimes people think that you're gonna spend more. But that's contingent on if you're building from the ground up or if you're buying an inventory home. So builders out here like to buy a lot of make-ready homes. They call them make-ready homes. So they build a home.
Love make-ready homes.
Right. They do pick out all the selections, right? but you can move right into the home. I mean, as soon as it's complete, everything is pretty much already done for you, and you move right into the home. So timeline is not really an issue unless you're leasing, right? Because I do have a client that I'm working with now. He's leasing. His lease ends in May, but the home that he wants won't be complete until September. So that is one of the cons of new construction, the timing. You got to make sure the timing is right. So if you are considering buying new construction, give yourself some time. I would say at least, what, like 3 months, maybe?
Give or take, yeah. But to me, I think, truthfully speaking, the pros outweigh the cons.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Let's share the pros.
I mean, you're looking at it from the standpoint, 2025, and I think that most people, if you are considering buying, you need to be strategic in terms of where you're buying and the type of home that you are buying. You want to buy a home that you're going to know in the foreseeable future, let's just say 3 to 5 years, give or take, is going to get that appreciation,
Right.
And
you can get that with the new home versus
absolutely. And most of these new communities here in Houston, in Texas in general, you're talking about building the shops and the new infrastructure, and don't let them put a HEB over there and that 2 to 3 year time frame. You're going to see the value of property skyrocket. When it comes down to it, buying a home, especially if it's not your forever home, it's a business decision.
It's an investment.
Period, point blank.
Right.
You know what I mean? We've been blessed and fortunate enough to help clients that have to, unfortunately use, their equity in their home, to pay for, surgeries and things of that nature. So I think just knowing if you're buying a new construction home, you might be looking at a 2.99 interest rate, 3.99 interest rate, 4.99 interest rate fixed over the duration of your loan. So let's just say, case in point, the interest rate do change in that 3 year time frame, you can just refinance and get what the best interest rate they have to offer. So there's so many pluses and minuses, when you're comparing each and new construction or a resale. But I mean, I think the pluses far outweigh the minuses in regards to that.
Yeah, because with the new construction, builders are incentivized to sell. So right now out here in the Houston market, the builders are buying chunks. They're buying the rates in bulk. They're buying them down for the buyers. And a lot of them, I mean, some of the ones we've come across are buying them down as low as 2.99%. Well, the market rate is averaging around 6%. Okay, so
and paying closing costs.
Right, you do the math on what your monthly mortgage payment would look like. These are the type of deals that you're getting with new construction, which is a pro, versus a resale. You're subject to that market interest rate. Because the lenders out here, well, a lot of them now are working to partner with the builders so that they can offer you the best loan programs, but some of them aren't in a position to be able to do that. So if you do buy resale, in actuality, you're going to pay more. You're going to have a higher mortgage payment.
You're going to have a higher mortgage payment. You're going to, and I guess, if we wanted to pivot and say what are some of the pluses with going to resale, I mean, you are going to have more flexibility in regards to location.
That's true.
Some people, they got to be zoned to
people are even selling new homes now too.
They got to be zoned to a certain high school. They got to be zoned to a certain middle school,
right?
Commute wise, you know what I mean. So and from that standpoint, yes. Then if with that being said, then resale have to be the way you go. But there's always contingencies that can be done to get you a better effective interest rate. But if we're saying apples to apples, if you want a more of a up-to-date energy efficient home, with the potential to maximize your return on your investment, because that's what it is at the end of the day.
Right.
Owning a home is the ability to maximize your investment that you can use that to leverage to make more capital. That's really what owning a home is. You know what I mean? And so the people that are, forward thinking in that regard, they are the ones that can take advantage of the market, even when you got, people in, the loud people in the back saying, oh, it's not a good time to buy a home. Well, the people in the know, you know what I mean? They know now is the best time to buy a home.
Well, it all depends too on what your intentions are with that home. So I
Mm-hmm.
would say resale is effective for someone that's looking to do maybe like a fix or flip,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you're an investor or you just want to come in, you want to, do a complete rehab or renovation on a home. You plan on renting it out to a single family. Maybe you want to do an Airbnb. Maybe you want to do what they're calling like a co-living, kind of situation where you rent per room. That would be in your
Mm-hmm.
best interest to do a resale
Indeed.
versus doing a new construction,
Indeed.
because once you do the renovations on that home, the equity in that home is going to go up, and it doesn't really matter if it's in an up and coming, area or not. You just need to make sure that it's close to public transportation. If you have renters that don't drive, or it's close to the city, if you have folks that are looking for a short commute time. So you got to think about things like that. And then with investors, oftentimes, I mean, they have to put more money down anyway, sometimes all the way up to 20%, because it's not their
Absolutely.
primary residence. So that is something to be mindful and thoughtful of. But if you're a first time home buyer, just in my opinion, I don't recommend that you
New
buy
construction.
a
Hey, look,
resale.
shouts out to all the resale people, man. But this is, it's
It's
not a
hard out
far
here.
fit, man.
It's hard out here.
It's not a fair fight, man.
Yeah.
And new construction, where it's the way to go. And I
Yeah.
think that, anybody that, if you have clients, and you have home buyers looking for a home, if they are flexible in regards to, location, and it's just it's the way to go, because you get the better interest rate. Our fiduciary duty is to get our clients the best rate and the best deal possible. Well, I mean, if you're able to get a 2.99 interest rate,
Mm-hmm.
what's better than that?
Right. Yeah.
That feel like COVID interest rate. Now I remember back when COVID was going, I was like, man, look,
No one thought they would ever see interest rates that low again.
I had clients back in the COVID days. I was like, look, you ain't gonna see this interest rate again. And here we are, 2025. You able to see these rates again, with that being said, new construction, but still.
Yeah. But I would say if you are a first time home buyer and you are waiting for the market to crash again, you are wasting
You're wasting your time.
Yes, you need to pivot.
Turn that news off.
Right. You need to pivot.
Lying to you.
You need to pivot, and you need to look into new construction, because that's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck.
Most bang for your buck.
We have clients now who are buying new homes. They're first time home buyers. They're walking in with $60,000
in equity.
Okay, in the door. There's so much that you can do with the equity that you build in your home, and I mean, and that's just coming in.
I mean, let's think about that. I mean, what can you do with an extra $1,000 in the bank just by buying a new home, and you factor in the fact that,
well, you got to think about your future. Do you have kids that are college bound? You can leverage that money to put your kids through school.
Family emergencies. You know what I mean?
Family emergencies.
I think the people that are being conscientious in taking advantage of their opportunities now are going to be the ones that I say for the foreseeable future be able to do things in regards to quality of life and things of that nature.
Gives you more flexibility.
Yeah,
it really
absolutely
does. Versus doing a resale. Yes, you will build equity. It is possible to walk into a home with equity. However, you have to be concerned about the neighborhood. So once these neighborhoods are already built out, right? If you buy in an area that may be going down, maybe there's no longer any growth, there's no longer any expansion, then you have to worry, or they're moving renters into the neighborhood, you have to worry about the value of the homes going down, right? So that can be a concern, and it's not going to be in your best interest if you're utilizing this property as an investment property, right? And you want to tap into that equity and say you maybe want to take that money and you want to put a down payment, on another home. Or maybe you want to take that money and you want to use it to build your custom dream home. So if you want to do things like that, you have to consider the location, where you're buying, and
Hmm.
how much that home is going to be worth in the next 3 to 5 years.
Absolutely. Absolutely. School districts, school districts, school
School district is
districts.
important too.
Very
Absolutely.
important. Very important. You know what I mean? I really
A lot of
encourage.
people have families, so
Absolutely.
they want to be
Absolutely.
they want to be in communities where
Hmm.
they're in the top school district. I mean,
Hmm.
it's important. I know when I moved out here
Hmm.
from Maryland, we were zoned to the Conroe
One of the
ISD
better
school.
school
Yeah,
districts here in
right. Yeah,
Houston.
and it's one of the best school
Hmm.
districts. But that was the determining factor in where I lived, and I
Should
had to
always be
commute
your
over an hour.
determining factor.
Yeah,
Should always be your determining
I
factor.
had to commute over an hour to work. I was driving all the
Hmm.
way from the Woodlands
Hmm.
to South Houston,
Hmm.
every day. But that
Hmm.
was important. So I made the sacrifice and I did what I had to do because it was important that my son and I lived in an area that had great schools.
Yeah, that's what it's all about.
Hmm.
That's what it's all about.
So I would say another con of resale too, and a lot of people may not know this. You may pay less for a resale. However, you need to have a nest egg or an emergency fund that's in reserve to address unplanned repairs and
Hmm.
maintenance and service, because it's not like renting. You can't call the
Mm-mm.
landlord, to come out and fix it. Or if you have a
Mm-mm.
new construction, you can't call the builder,
Mm-mm.
to come out and fix it.
Mm-mm.
All of that is on you. And if your spouse is not handy, I mean, what do you
I'm not
do?
handy.
Right? Yeah.
I'm good with a hammer though.
Right, right. So, well, hey, that's a cost that you have to take
It's gonna
on.
be a cost,
And a
yeah.
lot of people don't factor that. They don't factor that in versus a new construction. These
Mm-hmm.
builders are offering like 10-year warranties.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not looking at having to
Mm-hmm.
spend money to replace a roof until maybe
Yeah.
like 10 years down the line.
If
Or
that.
replace the water heater. Right, if that. Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because they do guarantee a lot of their work. And if there are issues, you don't come out of pocket for that. You just put
Mm-hmm.
in or submit a request,
Mm-hmm.
for a service repair or maintenance repair, and they
Mm-hmm.
come out and they take care of it free of cost. So it's definitely less stressful, I think.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that kind of piggyback on that. So you got some women. You purchase your own home, and you haven't jumped that broom yet.
Hmm.
You know, might be in your best interest to get that new construction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think, and I can speak from both ends too, because when I bought my first home was really old. It was built like in the 1970s. It was a townhome. I was just really excited to be a homeowner. I think I was like 27 when I had first bought my new home, and the seller, he hid like a lot of things from me. So I did pay for the home inspection. I didn't opt out from the home inspection, but after I moved in, the water heater went out. And then I can remember
You
I
say
had
he put
plumbing
like
issues.
he put some gum.
Yeah. Yes. Well, and so instead of him paying a professional, right, to come out and fix the things that were found in the home inspection, he called himself fixing it himself. So there were some plumbing discrepancies or issues. He took gum and used gum to patch
Wrigley's
up. Yeah,
finest.
used gum to patch
Winter
up
fresh.
issues with the pipe. So while I'm living in the home, I mean, of course, it gave out, and he wasn't responsible for that. And then the home inspector that I used, my agent at the time didn't tell me I needed to use a home inspector that guaranteed their work. And I was basically stuck, holding the bag. So it ended up being a money pit for me. And I got rid of the home. And then when I moved to Houston, I decided that I would not inherit someone else's issues. I would buy new. So I built an inventory home. That's what I ended up doing.
And you had a bad agent too
What?
on that first
That
home.
first one?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing about it was I thought that she was my friend. This was someone that I knew, and
Friends.
yeah, I worked with her for years. I thought we were friends. I expected her to look out for me, but she just wanted a quick sale. That was it. So she didn't do her due diligence when it came down to looking out for me. And I was young. I didn't know, but the second time around, I did learn, and I went with a brand new construction, and I had a better agent that educated me, on the process. And she was the one that pushed me, into going into a new construction. because it was basically like I was a first time home buyer, all over again. Even though I had already owned a home, I was starting over from scratch, and it was definitely a better experience. I did have issues. No home is perfect, so it doesn't matter. That's a myth. Whether it's new or old, no home is perfect. You will have issues,
Always.
but it makes it a lot easier and less stressful when you know that you have a warranty or a guarantee, that things are going to be taken care of, and you don't have to find the money or come out of pocket, to address it.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. What other, do you think there's any more pros on resale? Well, I mean, I see it as a pro if you're an investor. If you're a first time home buyer, I don't really see any pros.
I really don't. I mean,
unless you're going to do a house hack or something like that.
Yeah. I mean,
but even then, I mean, it's still not
new construction where
I mean, see, that's what people don't realize. So the resale homes, those are that market's not doing so well. Those are the homes that are sitting.
Yeah,
the
with
homes
the interest
that are
rates,
selling, right? Because the interest rates are so high. The homes that are selling are the new construction, because the homes that are for resale, these owners don't want to spend the money to make updates. They don't want to spend the money to get the home up to code.
And then
they don't want to spend the money to update the finishes and the flooring. They don't want to do any of that.
They don't want to do any of that. And then let's not even forget about factoring, that judgment last year about the whole commission thing. You know what I mean? With buyers and agents.
Yeah, with the buyers and agents, yes.
You know what I mean? And so you factor that. Hey, these builders, to you agents out here, man, they trying to take care of you. Yeah. Like I call some builders and they'll tell you, we love realtors. You know what I mean? And so, I mean,
they're willing to work together. They're willing to work as a
it's
team.
A partnership.
Yeah.
And the so it's a lot different. Most builders are very, agent friendly, and customer buyer friendly. You know what I mean? They trying to do what's best for the buyer. They're trying to do what's best for the agent. And I think just that energy and that dynamic, is conducive to making, good deals happen. You know what I mean? And making it a less stressful process. Whereas you might be dealing with, certain sellers and, they nipping and tucking. Maybe they feel like they need to get X amount of dollars back on their sale, not really looking at, the overall market or really what their home is valued at. And so you might go into a situation thinking you're going to, make this, and then they trying to, cut this and cut that so they can make that. And so just that whole energy and that whole dynamic, man, it can be antiquated in regards to getting a good deal done.
Yeah, that's true. And then I think with resale too, if you want to get the best deal that you can get, you will need to consider going with the inside lender. Your credit union is not going to get you 2.99% interest rate.
Shouts out to all you lenders out there, man. But man,
and if you are working with a lender that's going to pay a down payment assistance, there's a catch to down payment assistance. Just so you know, they do assess a higher interest rate, which is higher than the market. So you end up paying more on the back end.
You go.
Yeah, you're gonna
pay it back.
Yeah, they don't give you free money. They don't. So just so you know.
And there's a lot of great lenders, man. I got a lot of great lender partners, man. I love them, man.
Absolutely.
But man, it's tough.
Yeah,
it's tough right now because
no one's they're not giving. Because
I mean, there's limitations. There's limitations to what you can do, and us as agents, us as realtors, man, our job first and foremost is taking care of our clients, man, and getting our clients the best deal possible and making it as less stressful as possible. And if that's your goal and that's your focus, 99% of the time it's going with that inside lender.
And I think another thing to point out too is the appraisal. So a lot of folks don't know this, but with the resale, that is a concern, right? Is the home going to appraise? Because you can only borrow the amount of money that you get approved for. And a seller may have a home listed, say at $500,000, but the home only appraises
That's a good point.
At $480,000.
That's a good point.
But you were only approved, maybe you were only approved for $440,000. So if you still want that home, you have to make up the difference. You have to come out of pocket, to cover that cost, because the lender is not going to give you a loan, for the value of a home, and it underappraised. They're not going to do that. So that's something to be concerned about.
The builder's gonna builder inside that
versus a builder, right? Yeah,
they gonna do whatever.
Their home's overappraised.
Yeah. Okay,
depending on the location. Because location is everything.
Location,
so
everything.
Their homes
don't get it twisted.
Overappraised. And if it's a good builder, they already know the market value of that home. So they can tell you, how much equity you're walking in the door with. So you don't have to worry about the deal falling apart or not being able to get approved for financing, because the home is going to appraise for more than it's worth. Indeed. So you don't have to have concerns about being upside down on your loan.
Walk in with money.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the dream.
That's it.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, so I think that pretty much sums it up as far as the pros and the cons of new construction versus resale. If you guys have any questions, if you're considering relocating, or if you're local to Houston and you're looking to buy, reach out to us. All of our contact info is located in the description below. And if this is your first time to the channel, be sure to like and subscribe. We do post videos 2 times a week, so make sure that you hit that notification button and check in with us as you get notified every time we post a new video. So stay tuned for more great content. We'll see you guys soon.
God bless everyone.